when to use an epoxy primer. I've been talking about that I don't use it, and well, this is actually what's on here is a epoxy primer surfacer. It's not a full epoxy. A full epoxy has no surfacing ability at all. So when do you want to use it? I mean, there's a lot of people that say, oh, you don't do it right unless you do epoxy primer on everything because that seals it all and then you don't have rust. Depends on a couple things. One of the things it depends on, how quick are you going to be into paint? How long is that surface going to be open? You know, if you're not putting an epoxy primer on, the surface is still open. So let's say you're using well, it's semi-open, I'm going to say. Let's say you're using, trying to think here, polyester primer, or you're using for your surfacer, or you're using urethane primer as your surfacer, 2K urethane DTM. That's a lot of guys use. So, and it's good stuff. Okay, sand's nice and easy. It doesn't fill as well as polyester. It depends on the surface, what you're going over. But the reason why people sometimes need to use epoxy primer is a couple different things. You're in a high moisture climate. Let's say you're in Florida. It's constantly near the ocean. Even if your car's inside, it gets moisture. Then you might want to consider using an epoxy primer, like what I'm using is the PCL. I'll show you what it is real quick. The PCL 2K epoxy prime and seal. So it's also a primer surfacer, which is nice, so that you're not just throwing an epoxy primer on. That's kind of like sandblasting it and just throwing on something real quick too. And this is also a DTM product, which is cool because you don't need to use a I believe it is. It should be. I think I read the label on it. I want to make a misstatement, but let's see. Should say I read the label on almost everything I use, especially when it's something I'm never using. This the first time using this stuff. Okay, yeah. Let me read this real quick. I'm going to say not to go by exactly what I'm saying, but read the label yourself. It's painted over. I can't read it all. But I'm sure that it is self-etching. Just to be safe, read the label all the time. And I'm certain I did, because that's what I always do. But anyway, so this is kind of a bridge product. The thing that's cool about epoxy prime and seal is it's got an epoxy primer. It does seal the surface, but it also gives you a surfacer so you can go over your Bondo and stuff like that. Where epoxy primer, you can go over Bondo, but it's super hard sanding and it doesn't, it just doesn't sand. I wouldn't use it unless I don't know, unless it makes you feel better. To me, if I feel better, then I'm needing to go see a psychologist. So, but anyway, let's talk more about this real quick. So what you're trying to do by using an epoxy primer is to seal out moisture between the time when you open the surface to bare metal and the time that you get to paint. So if that's going to be months, many months, or a year, you probably should use epoxy primer. That's why most of the time I don't use it, because I'm into paint, pretty quickly, and stuff doesn't usually sit outside. But in this case, this car is sitting outside a little bit, and it's not gonna sit outside that long, because if the UV rays will start to take over and break down that epoxy seal prime, because it's not really designed to be in the sun. That's what paint's for. So these are all basic things, but I'm trying to get you guys in the mindset to realize that there is a time and need for epoxy primer. I know I've talked about it. I said, no, you don't need to use it. But I'm telling you, there are times when you do. When your car's going to sit outside or for a period of time or in your high moisture climate and you got the whole thing bare metal, you should use an epoxy primer. But I still wouldn't use most of the guys that I know, unless they're doing a real big custom shop rotisserie job, something like that, they're not doing epoxy prime. And again, I'll go back to, they're doing a rotisserie job. They're putting a car on a rotisserie. It's going to be on that thing for years. I just think that's crazy. Go ahead and do it, guys, whatever. But I mean, it is an easy way to do your restoration. This side got wet like the night after we had high moisture in the air, so it kind of burnished the finish on there. It's primer, so it's not paint. It doesn't do a complete seal, and but it does hold out the moisture for a lot longer period of time than regular primer. Some primers, like say urethane, might only be overnight before it starts to have an issue with streak just went by. There's the dog. He's hunting again. So anyway, it might be, let's say, a long period of time before you get to paint. Then you really wanted to do something to seal it, to stop the moisture from getting in there. If you live in Florida, then you might want to really consider using this product here, even if you're going to be, a month in Florida. The thing that's cool is this product it takes about 3 days to get to the point where you can work with it, where a full epoxy primer can take 30 to 60 days. So you see a lot of guys in these custom shops, like they'll epoxy primer something, and man, it just put it in the corner, and because they're going to be working on that thing for months or something like that, or years. Some guys are doing, and that's the reason why they use the epoxy, and because maybe they stripped the whole thing to bare metal, and they're gonna, and they've sandblasted. Those are all things that you pretty much need to use. Sandblasting is, the surface is so open that the only thing that's going to stop it from rusting right away is epoxy primer. So if you're taking your car down and having it sandblasted, then that's when you want to use it. So those are the reasons. I mean, remember, primer is not a sealer unless it says on the can that it's a sealer. If it doesn't say on its sealer, primer, sealer, surfacer, it doesn't seal. And then primer surfacers that seal don't seal as good as a primer sealer that just seals. So that's what an epoxy primer is. A primer sealer. The full epoxy primer is just a primer sealer, no surfacer. It's going to do the best job of sealing it. So figure out your schedule, how long you're going to be having this thing apart, how long it's going to be open, and figure out the primer for the job you're trying to do. That's what it's all about. That's why I don't use it. There's no reason for me to use it. I'm going to be in paint on this. Even on this car, I'm going to be in paint within probably 30 days. And some of you guys can see some of the work. I still got to do a lot of line work on this side. There's my stuff I did in the front. I actually just I had some crappy lacquer primer. Use that for some of the jams and stuff like that because it dries quick. But it's garbage. It doesn't work very good at all. It doesn't have any sealing ability at all. You put it outside and it'll rust right away. So anyway, those are some of the tips you can use for epoxy primer, and when to use it, how to use it. Try and figure out the right primer for your job, what you're trying to do. So if I can back up one more little summary, I'll just tell you, primer, surfacer is to sand and level. stuff. Primer sealer is to sand and put a primer surfacer over. Okay, it's just to seal the surface temporarily. Primer sealer surfacer, which is what I used on this, has a sealing ability, pretty good sealing ability, so it might be 3 months or something like that out in the weather, it might be okay. But anything longer than that, it's probably going to be rusting. The surface will break down. And then primer sealer has the highest sealing ability other than paint. So once you've painted your car, it is sealed. So it's kind of pointless when these guys say you gotta use epoxy primer first to do it right. That's not really true. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on how long it's going to be open. It depends on how long, if you're going to put the car in rotisserie, and for sure it's going to be a year, and you're in Florida, I'd use 100% epoxy primer on that. Okay. But I'll probably never do one of those because it just takes way too much time. Life is way too short, and I'm not going to sit there and gloat over something I built. I've already done all that stuff when I was young and stupid. So, you guys are still young and stupid, so you can do it. Or maybe you're old and stupid and you still want to just keep on making stuff so perfect that you never want to drive it. I get guys buying my cars. One guy called me up and he goes, "Hey," he goes, I think I want to buy your Bug." And I go, "Okay, well, come on over." Well, I couldn't meet schedules with the guy. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have bought it as soon as he saw it. It's a really nice car, 65 sunroof, the other one. And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I have 2 other cars, and they're in their concourse show, and I'm afraid to drive them." And I go, "That's fun. You got these custom beautiful cars and you don't even want to drive them because they're too bitchin', Okay, you got yard ornaments or garage ornaments, but he was really interested in the Bug because it looked really cool and nice and he could drive it. So, why don't you build cars that way? It's like everybody tries to outdo each other. Why not just enjoy what you have? Why not build something and enjoy it and not be sitting there going, I love driving that 65 sunroof. That thing's got solid brakes, it's good steering, drives super nice. It's a little low. I think it's been lowered in the front a little bit. They probably took the torsions out. It's not really low or anything. It rides really nice and smooth. That's the kind of car that I want to build. Something that somebody can get in and enjoy. And if they get a scratch in it, they're not just going, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to take it to the body shop. It's going to cost me $10,000. And they'll never match this color and whatever, all that stuff, Why put yourself through all that? It's just, to me, that's like ill. When I was younger, I learned my lesson. I realized that there was no reason for that. I did concourse show stuff, not now. There's no way. I would never touch it. It doesn't matter how much money somebody had, wouldn't do it. But anyway, that's epoxy primer. A couple of life lessons in there, guys. Enjoy your project and get it done and drive that sucker, man. Let's see you at a show. Talk to you later. Bye.